Good morning. This is Alan Gassman, and I am here with one of my heroes, Professor SRI Kumar Rao, and we're going to talk about professional acceleration strategies. So those of you who have seen our webinars on taxes, estate planning, creditor protection planning, you've got relief from that today. Today we're going to talk about how to get you to a better place to achieve some things. If you have booked on through CPA Academy, you're going to get a 1-hour credit today. You just have to answer 3 of the very, very easy questions, the polling questions. We'll get to that. If you came in through our website, then you will not get continuing education credit, and you probably don't even deserve it. If you have a question during the presentation, just click on the questions inverted pyramid there. Type in your question. I see a lot of people saying hello from various places all over the country. And welcome, and thanks for letting us know that all this is working. On the 14th, I'll be back for asset protection from A to Z. And on the 28th, I'm going to tell you what I learned at the Heckerling Institute next week. It'll take me at least until the 28th to write out my notes. So I want to introduce you to SRI Kumar Rao. In about 1998, I was in a coaching program, and the coach came in and said, I am so excited. I met the most interesting man I've ever met, and he's written the most interesting book I've ever read, and it is Are You Ready to Succeed? So Professor Rao grew up in India, was originally educated in India, got a physics degree in India, came to the United States, got an MBA at Columbia, then a PhD at Columbia, then was the marketing director for a film called The Exorcist, did very well in the entertainment industry, but then went back to teach at Columbia because he likes to suffer. So at Columbia, Professor Rao came up with a protocol for the MBA program, how you take an MBA student and how you help them to think to be successful and to have more personal fulfillment. Is that pretty much accurate, SRI Kumar?
Reasonably.
Okay. So since then, he's written a couple of great books, Happiness at Work, and then his most recent book, Modern Wisdom, which I'm really enjoying. I've read Are You Ready to Succeed at least 5 times. I've read Happiness at Work at least 4 times, and I'm on my 2nd time through Modern Wisdom. So here's our first polling question for you CPAs who want credit. SRI Kumar Rao was A, born in India, B, has a physics degree from India, C, has MBA and PhDs from Columbia in business and marketing, and D, is a best-selling author. And the answer is E, all of the above, or any of A, B, C, or D. So I guess that was a trick question. Okay. All right. So SRI Kumar, where are we? There we are. I'm gonna just turn off my screen here. And what I thought it would be nice to do is to discuss your thoughts on reaching goals, because when I give workshops for young professionals and students on success, my first discussion is you should have reasonable goals, short-term goals, medium-term goals, long-term goals, lifetime goals. What do you want to achieve? And you should sit down in a quiet place for a period of time, maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, and write down what are your 90-day goals? What are your 1-year goals? What are your 3-year goals? Write them down and think them through. What do I have to do to actually achieve this goal? Is the goal worth achieving? What does it cost in time and energy? So, SRI Kumar, how do you look at that process, and how do you advise on that process?
I'd like to add something which will turbocharge the process, Alan. Do exactly what you have said. But once you have set the goals, forget about the goals. This is super important. Forget about the goals, because the primary value of setting a goal is that it establishes the direction in which you want to go. Once you have done that, don't give any thought to it. Pour all of your energy into what are the actions that I have to undertake in order to meet my goal. Too many of us become obsessed with reaching the goal, and when you do that, it's actually a detriment. Let me give you an example that probably everyone can relate to. Go back to when you were young and you really wanted to meet and go out with that girl or that boy, and you desperately, desperately wanted it. You discover very quickly that desperately wanting something is a repelling force. It's the same way with goals. When you desperately want it, I gotta have it for my well-being, it's a repelling force. But if you can be established in the fact that, yes, I have this goal, this is the direction in which I want to go, and I'm going to try my darndest in order to accomplish it, and I'm going to pour all my emotional energy into what are the actions I have to undertake to get it. But you know, I'm going to be okay regardless of whether I reach my goal or not. And then you find that you'll make incredible progress towards your goal. In other words, wanting it, working towards it, but at the same time being okay with not having it is a magic formula. Because here is something that most of us don't recognize. The benefit of setting a goal and trying our level best to achieve the goal is not achieving the goal. The benefit of setting a goal and trying our level best to achieve the goal is the learning and growth that happen in us and to us as we try our level best to achieve the goal. If we actually achieve the goal, that's a bonus. Be grateful. If you don't achieve the goal, the learning and growth have already happened, so you're ahead of the game. But when you truly do that, the probability that you will get to the goal you want actually increases, and it increases exponentially, not just a little bit.
Sri Kumar, what about working with other people, finding synergism, finding coaching others in order to reach goals? Can people reach goals on their own, or do they really need a support group?
The point is, you always need a support group. Very often, the support group you need is not the support group that you think you need. So always be open in general terms to the universe. Say, this is what I want to do, and be open to the universe showing you what you really need to do. And sometimes help comes in the strangest possible manner. People whom you don't know very well, you might not even regard very highly, make a passing comment, and because you're open, you think about it and say, gee, you know, there's a lot of truth in that one. Sometimes you pick up a book and it opens to the exact passage where what you need is outlined. The more you're open to help will come to me from the universe, the more you find that in fact it does come to you. And never make the mistake of thinking I did it all myself. You did nothing by yourself. You were always supported by a lot of things, events, persons. Be grateful to all of them. Be explicitly grateful to all of them.
So I think now you mentioned something that reminds me of the question of whether there's abundance or scarcity. And we find that so many professionals and clients have a scarcity model.
Yes.
And you know, they have a $50 million net worth, but they're really afraid they're going to run out of money. We have the client who lives on Social Security in a mobile home and thinks she has all the money in the world. How do you understand your own scarcity model or abundance model, and how do you change that?
understanding it requires deep reflection, and think about that. Do questions about money, about finances frequently intrude on your thought? Are you constantly regretting, I wish I could do that, but I can't do that, and there's a tinge of regret and envy towards those who can? Does such thinking permeate you? If it does, then you have a scarcity mindset. And it's very important. Let me tell you a story. About 25, 30 years ago, the Wall Street Journal ran a major article, and it said that when people moved from $250,000 a year to $750,000 a year, they experienced acute financial anxiety. Now, this was about 30 years ago, so $250,000 then is probably worth, 700, 800,000 today. So when they moved from that to $1.5 million, they started getting more financially anxious. And it pointed out the reason for that is when they were making the original sum of money, they had it all in the sense they traveled business class, they had a vacation home, and stuff like that. But when they got to the higher range, they started rubbing shoulders with people who had the private jets, who not only had an estate in the Hamptons, but went there by helicopter. And they wanted all of those things and they couldn't get it. And they felt acutely anxious. No matter what level you are, there will always be somebody who has more. There will be somebody more handsome, whose jokes are funnier, who has prettier partners. It's always going to happen. So as long as you're in the habit of comparing yourself to somebody else and then determining your well-being based upon where you stack up in that compare, it's a road to perdition. You're going to be eternally, eternally unhappy. So here is a very powerful technique. Think of your awareness as a flashlight. What does a flashlight do? It illuminates whatever you shine it on. Shine it on the floor, lights up the floor. Shine it on the ceiling, lights up the ceiling. And I'll prove it to you. I would like you, Alan, to shine your flashlight of awareness on this chair in which you're sitting. And the moment I ask you to do that, do you notice the pressure of your buttocks on the seat, the feel of the fabric or the leather against the back of your thigh?
Sure.
30 seconds ago, you were unaware of all of that, and now you are. Why? Because you've shown your flashlight of awareness on that. So what do most people do? They shine the flashlight of their awareness on the problems in their life, or more precisely, on the things that they think are problems in their life. They shine the flashlight of their awareness on, oh my God, I want to go on a vacation, but I can't afford it. They shine the flashlight of their awareness on their perceived lack of abundance. Lousy strategy. Change it around. Shine the flashlight of your awareness on the many, many, many ways in which you're truly blessed and fortunate. Can you have dinner tonight? Do you have to worry about whether you're going to have dinner tomorrow night? Do you have a bed to sleep in? Do you have a roof over your head? When I ask you all of those questions, you say, yeah, do you recognize you're privileged? In fact, you're more privileged than 90+% of the world's population. But you do not acknowledge that because you never shine the flashlight of your awareness on that. Consciously, deliberately shine the flashlight of your awareness on the many incredible ways in which you are unbelievably fortunate. When you get up in the morning, don't go immediately to the space of, oh my God, there's too much to do and I don't have enough time to do it all. Shine it on the ways in which you're blessed. As you go through the day, do that repeatedly. It is my hope that everyone who is listening to this will occupy a default emotional domain of appreciation and gratitude. Because the great thing about being there in that default domain of appreciation and gratitude is when you're there, you're not anxious, you're not nervous, you're not fearful, you're not stressed out. The two cannot coexist. From that default emotional domain of appreciation, gratitude, then reach out to address the things in your life that you wish were different. And you'll find that you'll have much more success and you'll have a much better experience of life.
I think there's no doubt, Sri Kumar, that when I have represented many, many successful people, but the most successful have a lot of gratitude and they give back a lot. There's a lot of charity or a lot of things they do for their family, a lot of gratitude. But how I know from what you just said, I want to have a lot of gratitude. How do you do that? Do you make a written list of what you're thankful for every day? Do you talk to someone about it? Do you do self-hypnosis? How do I become a gratitude person?
All of the above, Alan. And it's funny you mentioned that because I just finished a blog piece on how do you achieve gratitude. It's going to come out the week after next, so look out for it. But I'll answer the question right now. The problem most of us, and by the way, the gratitude now is everywhere, you know, journals, in popular articles, oh, be grateful, be grateful. And many of them give you sub tips like pick 3 things every day for which you're grateful, or 3 things could happen. Most of them don't work very well. And let me tell you why they don't work very well. They don't work very well because you, and I guarantee 99% of those who are listening to this broadcast, are type A individuals who live in their heads. So there is a tendency to think your way. I have to be grateful. What do I have to be grateful for? Good health, check. Food to eat, check. Roof over head, check. It doesn't work. You cannot think gratitude. You have to feel gratitude. Thinking gratitude is good, but very, very mediocre in terms of its impact on your well-being. Feeling gratitude, on the other hand, opens up the universe. So how do you go from thinking gratitude to feeling gratitude? And the short answer to that is it's easy, it's simple, but it does require dedicated effort on your part. And what it means is you not only reflect on your life, but you reflect on the list you made of things to be grateful for and tie them together. For example, let's say you're grateful that you have food to eat, you have a bed to sleep in, a roof over your head, and think about how all of this ties together into your experience of life. Because you have food to eat, you don't go to bed hungry. Because you have a bed to sleep in, you get a sound night's sleep. So because you're well rested and well fed, when your client calls you and your client has a problem, you can devote all your attention to that client and solve the client's problem. And because you do that successfully, more clients come to you, and that gives you the income that you need to maintain the lifestyle that you have. And all of these things tie together. As you start reflecting on it, you will find gradually the thinking morphs into a feeling. And think about how much has happened in your life that you really didn't do by a conscious effort. Somebody just came up to you and said, hey, you ought to talk to this guy, and he becomes one of your biggest clients. You have an intractable problem, and you meet someone at a seminar you go to who say, oh, here's how you can deal with issues like that. And that opens up an entirely new practice for you. Think of how many things have happened by the kindness of strangers and happenstance. And the more you marvel at that, the more you realize the universe has your back. And when you truly realize that, your thinking gratitude morphs into feeling gratitude. It will happen, but it may take some time, and it does require consistent, dedicated effort on your time. But when you do, the benefits, I can't even point a finger at how great the benefits are. That's how you go from thinking gratitude to feeling gratitude.
Wow, fantastic. All right, I'm going to now I have gratitude for all the attendees who need another polling question. Are we ready, Brittany? Okay, now we're going to talk about relationships. And I can improve my relationships by A, being friendly, B, bringing out the best in others, C, being kind to myself, and D, the correct answer, all of the above. So, Sri Kumar, let's talk about relationships.
Sure.
how do you look at relationships differently than maybe many people do?
One of the things that I find very distressing, Alan, is that for many people, perhaps a majority of people, relationships become transactional. Can you get us back on the screen and stop that, huh? Relationships become transactional, and it comes in so many ways. I'll give you an example. I was with a couple recently, and they were going to a birthday party, and they said, "Jay, we got to take a gift." And the question became, well, our child had a birthday party, and what kind of gift did they give? And we'll give something which roughly matches the gift that they gave. Or you want to invite someone up and say, oh, he never calls me for dinner, so I'm not going to call him for dinner. So in the back of our minds, always there is a notion of reciprocity. There is a notion of we have to match what they do, what they give, and so on. This makes relationships transactional. So let me give you a different model. You help people simply because you're in a position to help them and they ask for help. You don't help people with the understanding or the expectation that they are going to help you back. There's a very popular book called Influence, and it's by a person who's renowned. He's a very world famous professor, Robert Cialdini, who talks about reciprocity as a very powerful tool and you ought to use it. And he advocates helping people and reminding them that you help them with the expectation that when you need help, you can go off and they will help you back. It works and is certainly better than not doing it, but it converts something which is a beautiful impulse into a transaction. So if I help you, Alan, I help you because you need help and I'm in a position to help you. But I don't expect that you will help me back. I don't place an obligation on you. I place an obligation on the universe. When I need help, that help will come. It may come from you, or it may come from someone totally unrelated to you and unrelated to us, but the universe will somehow give me the help that I need. And it may or may not come from you. If it comes from you, wonderful. If it doesn't, still fine. But I'm going to help you simply because I can. And if everybody behaved in that way and didn't make relationships transactional, not only would they have a deeper experience of life, but they would truly improve society.
Absolutely. Sri Kumar, you do a really, really good job of advising people how to deal and understand toxic people. The toxic boss, for example. Can you talk about your methodology of thought with the toxic person and maybe the mental model? Maybe you can mention them.
Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It depends. For many years, Alan, my course was among the most popular and highest rated at many of the world's top business schools. Columbia Business School, London Business School, Kellogg, Berkeley, Imperial College. These are not warm, fuzzy places. And many of my students are in investment banks, venture capital funds, private equity houses, and they are not warm, fuzzy places. So I have a lot of people talking to me about toxic bosses. So let me tell you a story which illustrates what I advise. So I had a woman who came to me and said, Professor Rao, you have no idea how bad my situation is. She was working for one of these zillionaires, and he was about average height and somewhat portly and completely uninhibited in his behavior. And every time he got mad at a person, he would draw himself to his full height and thrust his face into the person's face, and his face would grow red, and he'd scream, and bits of spit would fly out and land wherever. And she said, Professor Rao, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. The moment my bonus checks clears, I'm out of here. So I told her, yeah, you can do that, but you have invested a lot of time being here and you're going to be walking away with all of that. Do you really want to do that? And she said, what's the solution? I'm not going to put up with this behavior. So I told her a story. When our kids were younger, we went to Disney World, and we were waiting in line for one of the attractions, and it was a rather long line, and there was a little kid, must have been 7, 8 years old, and he was going around touching people and making a nuisance of himself. He had sticky fingers, and people didn't like being touched with sticky fingers, so they'd look at the man, and he'd feel embarrassed and hold the son tightly. And when he held the son tightly, the son would start to cry, so he'd let him go, and then he'd touch people with sticky fingers. So it's just an uncomfortable situation. Then his mother showed up, and with this capacity that mothers have, she was able to look beyond his behavior and say, he's hungry, and she produced foods. And in less than 10 minutes, there was a remarkable transformation. The kid from being a pest became the life and soul of the party, and everybody was joking around with him. And remarkable transformation happened in less than 10 minutes. So I suggested to this woman that when her boss was screaming at her, it was really just a kid having a tantrum. She was remarkably unconvinced. But a few days after that, she did something which annoyed him, and he went into his usual routine. He, stood up to his full height and thrust his face into her. She was taller than him, so he couldn't thrust his face into her, but he looked out of her, started screaming, and his face turned red, and bits of spit started flying. And all of a sudden, what I said seemed so apropos that this was a kid having a tantrum that she couldn't help it. She laughed. And the moment she laughed, it was as if she had slapped him. He said, "What did you do?" So she doesn't remember what she said, but she does remember that instant there was a change in her thinking. And rather than thinking of her boss as a tyrant, an ogre, someone to be scared of, she just saw him as a kid having an overgrown tantrum, an overgrown kid having a tantrum. The moment there was a change in her head, there was also a change in their relationship. He behaved exactly as he did with everyone, but he never shouted at her again. And 6 months later, she got another job and moved off someplace, and the situation went off. But the point is, when you make a change in your head, the situation always transforms. It's you and the universe are in a dance. And when you're in a dance, if you lead differently, the universe doesn't have a choice but to follow differently. Always remember that. And then when you do, you look at a tyrant, a toxic boss, and rather than become something terrible, something to be frightened of, it simply becomes a problem to be solved. And it can actually be quite entertaining and even fun solving that problem. But you have to make the transition, and that transition always happens between your ears.
What's going on inside the toxic person?
That is something I frequently point out to people. Can you imagine this person who is toxic? Can you imagine the anger, the rage, the insecurity that's bubbling around inside him? And they all nod their head and say, yeah, they can. Then I say, look, you have to put up this person for maybe 1 or 2 hours a week. He has to live with himself his whole life. And the moment I do that, they laugh. But that laughter is important, because in that laughter is the seed of compassion. This toxic person is hurting, and hurting pretty deeply. He's a fellow human being in pain. Now, obviously, you do want to protect yourself from the stuff that this person can do because he's in pain. But you can have compassion for this person in pain. And when you have that, you'll find that the relationship improves and your experience of life improves. Always.
Beautiful. Sri Kumar, also in the area of relationships, you've done a great job with your story of feeding the wolf, feeding the dog, because especially a lot of the people on this call were we're lawyers, we see litigation, we see some pretty nasty people. We see clients who are very nice until they're not nice anymore, then they become not so nice. We see people who have the opportunity to be ethical, or they have the opportunity to be unethical, and you're not sure which way they're going. So how do you handle that type of person? How do you make an okay person a nice person?
You can never, okay, put it this way. I don't encourage you to think in terms of I'm going to make an okay person a nice person or a really toxic son of a bitch into a reasonable human being. If that happens, wonderful. All you can do is point the way, and all you can do is be anchored in a space of deep calm yourself. I want to point two things out to you, Alan. Have you ever been in a position where someone is in the same room as you, maybe client, maybe opponent, doesn't matter, but this person is so angry, so on edge, so uptight that his very presence makes you uncomfortable? Have you ever been there in a situation like that?
Sure.
Okay, so what this means basically is we're always emitting vibrations at some level as to who we are. And when you feel upset, on edge, what you're really saying is this person's vibrations are making me uncomfortable, and this person is sucking me into his vortex. And what I advocate is you have to be so strongly rooted in your calmness and serenity that you suck that person into your vortex of calmness and serenity. And you practice until your vortex of calmness and serenity is stronger than his. That's the model for you to think about. Now I want to relate to you a story. It comes from the Native American tradition, but this particular version of the story is mine. There was a young man who was growing up to take his place among the adults of the tribe, and the final rite of passage was a conversation with the medicine man. And the medicine man told him, here's this dog, kind, intelligent, loving, trustworthy, and here is this wolf, malevolent, vicious, cruel, ready to bite at and kill anything. And the dog and the wolf are fighting. And the dog and the wolf are both inside you. So the young man asks, which one's going to win? And the medicine man says, whichever one you feed. Now think about it. Inside each one of us is our altruistic, let's help each other and make the world a better place impulses. And inside each one of us are let me grab everything I can for myself, and the devil take the hindmost impulses. The two are always fighting. It's your job to identify and feed the dog in yourself. It's also your job to identify and feed the dog in everyone you meet. And when the dog in you becomes friends with the dog in the other person, magic happens in both your lives. All too often, we feed the wolf, both in ourselves and others, and we don't even recognize that this is what we're doing. Let's say you go to the coffee machine and you're having a bad day at work, and a colleague comes up and he says, I'm having a bad day at work. And you say, you're having a bad day at work? Let me tell you about my bad day at work. And your bad day at work easily trumps his bad day at work, and you go off feeling smug. You've just fed the wolf, both in yourself and the other person. If instead you'd gone, you're having a bad day at work, I'm having a bad day at work, what can we do together to make sure nobody has such a bad day at work again? And now you started feeding the dog. So in every interaction you have with your boss, with your colleagues, with your customers, with your wife, with your children, with the Uber driver who takes you to the airport, ask yourself, am I feeding the dog? Am I talking, behaving, acting in a manner that leaves this person feeling better about themselves, feel better about the world and their place in it, having a better experience of life? Or am I feeding the wolf? Am I talking, acting, behaving in a manner that leaves them feeling worse about their situation? Am I feeding the dog or am I feeding the wolf? If you ask yourself that in every conversation and decide, okay, today I'm going to feed the dog. You can't feed the dog in someone else without feeding the dog in you. It's your experience of life that improves. Even trivial things. You know, somebody says good morning and you say good morning and you're halfway down the room before you even acknowledge it. Don't do that. Someone says good morning, say good morning. Look the person in the face. Acknowledge that person. Make it a real good morning as opposed to a mechanical formulaic greeting. If you start living deliberately, if you start consciously feeding the dog, that simple exercise will transform your life, and it'll happen fast within a couple of weeks.
I think you're right. Just the habit of smiling at people, telling them that you're really glad to see them, giving them a compliment, something they're really good at, and giving them once I had a very experienced client who used to say, Alan, I really like working with you because you get everything done on time. Your work is very accurate. Your bills are very reasonable. And I just said, Al, you're just putting such expectations on me. But it would be by positive spin. He would compliment people, and then he would tell them the conduct that he was expecting for them to live up to. So having those conversations is important.
The only thing I would add to what you just said is be sincere.
Right. I had a physician client, SRI Kumar. He let me come in early, I think 7:30 in the morning to meet with him. And there were about 9 staff members there. And he went up to every single staff member and said, hi, Anjani, how are you this morning? It's going to be a great day. And then there was a little conversation. Well, my daughter's doing better. Can you imagine if your boss came up to you every day in the morning and said, it's great to see you, and he actually meant it?
Yep.
And what an effective team he had.
And that's what I advocate for all of my coaching clients, Alan.
Right. Let's do another polling question here so that the CPAs can all relax getting their polling questions in. I want to talk something that I tell the law students that they really take to heart is that if you handwrite what you want to get done for the day, I call it a daily task list. And A, it's written down daily. B, it's reasonably prioritized. And C, it's written down during 10 minutes of silence. Then you will have a really good result. And the answer is D, all of the above. So Sri Kumar, why is it or how is it that this daily task list has such a powerful impact?
Focus. When you're doing this exercise, Alan, what you're really doing is you're shining the flashlight of awareness on that. Remember, I talked about it earlier and what a powerful tool it is. What you have outlined is simply shining the flashlight of your awareness on that. And therefore, it goes out and has its effect. Let me add something else to that. And this is something I don't know if I've shared with you or not, but it's really very powerful. It's good to do it every day if you can. I want you to carve out 50 minutes, 50, just 10 minutes short of an hour, where you are completely undistracted. No phone calls, no email, WhatsApp messages, no social media, and devote it to one task that is important to you. Can be personal, can be professional. How do I build up my business? Or, how do I meditate better? How do I grow my spiritual practice? Whatever, it doesn't matter. But it's something that's important to you. And you devote that 50 minutes to that task. And you think about it. And if you do that for 50 minutes every day, you will be amazed at how much progress you make in your life, your experience of life. And people come back to me immediately, and some of them are CEOs of companies. Oh, no, I can't do that. I can't take 50 minutes off. And the people who say, I can't do that, I can't take it, are the ones who really need to do it the most. Because so much of the time, what we're really doing is we're doing house cleaning. We're doing tasks which are urgent but not important. Like, for example, you're going someplace and you have a flat. Now you have to have your tire fixed or replaced immediately. That's urgent. But in the scheme of your life, that's not important. And always we go through life letting the urgent overtake the important, and that's a lousy strategy. If you follow the simple exercise that I just laid out, you will focus or at least give enough attention to the important, and that will make a huge difference in your life.
So that daily task list helps you think through what's important. And then during the day, you have to resist the urgent.
Yes.
Delegate.
Stuff you'll find you don't really need to do that. You know, all those articles that you marked out, oh yeah, I got to know that. You don't really need to do that. Start eliminating things. And you'll find that a lot of the things that you thought, oh, I absolutely have to know that, you really don't.
Right. A lot of lawyers and other professionals spend a lot of time making phone calls that could be resolved by an email, or think that they have to answer the phone at their desk for clients to be happy, which is not the case, or think that they have to spend time with a C+ client who doesn't treat them as well as the A clients that are waiting and never hear back from you because you're so busy with the C+ clients.
I have a very, very useful tip on that one, Alan. I don't have any C+ clients because I've got a simple rule of thumb. When this person calls, does my heart sing? And if the answer to that is yes, I take them on as a client. And if the answer to that is no, I tell them it's been so wonderful talking to you. Let me recommend someone who can really help you.
Well, it's easy for you to be selective, being the best-selling author of 3 books and being, sought after in all countries, but we don't all have that experience. So
yeah, Alan, you're quite far from that. You're definitely in a position where you can have only A+ clients, and you've introduced many of your clients to me, for which I thank you heartily. But every single client who's come to me from you is A or A+.
yeah, well, they're smart enough to come see you. So Sri Kumar, I know one of the things that you do with executives and professionals is help them find a spiritual balance. That they come to you and they're all hyper about their business success, but really don't understand that they could also have a very enjoyable life. Do you want to speak to that, or what seems to be missing and how you advise?
That's my niche now, Alan, and I'm far more precise and focused on that. I am a high-end coach. I coach entrepreneurs and senior executives who are very successful, who want to make a dent in the universe. They want to have an outsized impact, but at the same time, they have an explicit spiritual drive. They know that life is not about getting the biggest toys or the most toys, and there's more to that. And my job is to show them it's not an or, it's an and. Becoming hugely successful is your spiritual path. So how does that play out in terms of organizing your life, adopting the mental models you have? That's what my coaching is all about. And absolutely, there is no contradiction whatsoever between living a deeply spiritual life and becoming or trying to become outrightly successful, outrageously successful.
What's the first step people take, and what's the biggest transformation?
The biggest transformation is recognizing that you don't really want what you think you want. Let me repeat that. I have entrepreneurs who say, yeah, I want to be a $100 million business. And those who are at 100 million want to be in a $1 billion business. I want to be a $1 billion business. I want to be a best-selling author. I want to have, the prestige CEOs as my client, the CEOs of Google and Microsoft and so on. Actually, you don't. You're an entrepreneur and you say, I want to run a $1 billion company. You don't really want to run a $1 billion company. You want the feeling you have when you run a $1 billion company. And even that is not true. You want the feeling you think you will have when you run a $1 billion company. And you think the only way I'm going to get the feeling of running a $1 billion company is by actually running a $1 billion company. So let me go, run a $1 billion company, and I want to grow revenues and so on. And that's the trap we all fall into. What we're really seeking is a complete sense of fulfillment. And in that sense of fulfillment, if you find that you're running a $1 billion company, fine. If you find that your company crashes and burns and you're off, that's fine too. Your well-being is not dependent on your running a $1 billion company, but since that is where the universe has placed you, you're going to do the best you can. And when you can really bring that mindset in, two things happen. One, your experience of life improves immeasurably. And two, the probability that you will actually run a $1 billion company also improves exponentially. It's kind of funny, the more you are detached from it and genuinely detached, the more likely it is to happen. That's a paradox that you have to experience for yourself before you can truly understand it.
So that goes to the journey versus the
destination. Absolutely, yes. Enjoy the journey. It's the only thing you have. The destination is a mirage. You get there, you tarry a few minutes, and then you're off someplace else. The journey is with you always. In fact, it's the only thing you have.
Yeah. So what other stories do you tell that really impact professionals the most?
The number one story, I think, is, and I've had people who took my course 2 decades ago, and I haven't met them in between, but they came up to me and say, Professor Rao, I learned this from you, and I can't tell you how much it's helped me. It's called Good Thing, Bad Thing, Who Knows? And it's a story comes from an ancient Sufi tradition. A man and his son lived in a beautiful valley, and they were very happy, but they were also very poor. And the man got sick and tired of being poor. He decided he was going to become wealthy. And he decided the way he was going to become wealthy was by breeding horses. So he bought a stallion. Didn't have any money to buy a stallion. He borrowed heavily from the neighbors. And the very day he got the stallion, it kicked the top bar loose from the paddock where he housed it and ran away. And the neighbors came around. You were going to become a rich man, but your stallion has run away. And you still owe us money. You are screwed. And the man shrugged his shoulder and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? That stallion fell in with a group of wild horses, and they were close to where the man lived, so he was able to entice them into the paddock, which he had repaired, so escape was no longer possible. And now all of a sudden he had his stallion back, plus a dozen wild horses, which by the standards of that village made him a wealthy man. So the neighbors came around saying, oh, we thought you were destitute, but fortune has smiled upon you, how lucky you are. And he shrugged his shoulders and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? The man and his son started to break the horses so they could sell them on the market. And one of the horses threw the man's son and stomped on his leg. And it broke and it healed crooked. And the neighbors came around. He's such a fine young lad, and now he'll never be able to find a girl to marry him. How sad. And the man shrugged his shoulder and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? That summer, the king of the country declared war on a neighboring country, and press gangs moved to the villages, rounding up all the able-bodied young men to serve in the army. But this man's son was spared because he had a game leg. And the neighbors had tears in their eyes as they roamed around. We don't know if we'll ever see our sons alive again, but you still have your son. How fortunate you are. And he shrugged his shoulders and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? And it goes on like that forever. There's a very powerful lesson embedded here, and that is that no event causes suffering. Let's assume, 10 of your largest clients leave you. So you now have a lot of spare capacity, spare legal capacity. But if you say, oh my God, these clients have gone, what's going to happen to my practice? How am I going to meet my income projections? This is terrible. The moment you say this is terrible, that is the instant at which suffering begins. Suffering doesn't begin when your clients leave you. It begins the instant you label it, this is bad, this is terrible, I cannot bear it. Now, I invite you to think back on your life. Can you identify any situation that at the time it happened, you thought this is terrible? But you can now look back on that exact same thing and say, hey, that wasn't so terrible, or maybe even that was a darn good thing. Most people can recall several such instances. So if something happened to you in your past that at the time it happened, you thought was terrible, but you can now look back upon it and say, that was great. Is it possible that what you're today about to label terrible could in X years turn out to be pretty good? If the answer to that is yes, why are you in a hurry to label it bad? Just thinking about, is there any possible scenario by which this could be good, moves you to a different emotional domain. And if you then ask yourself the next question, what can I do to actually make it good? And you move seamlessly from the realm of despair to the realm of possibility. It's a very powerful exercise. It's not difficult. You just have to remember and use it conscientiously, and very soon it becomes second nature. And then you find that you're never knocked down, you're never depressed, you never have to overcome adversity because you don't label anything adversity. You just say this happened. And it's hugely powerful. I remember when I was talking to one of the largest financial institutions in the world, and they booked me at a very handsome fee to speak to a major conference. And 3 weeks before that, my client called me up and said, Sri Kumar, I'm sorry, they canceled the thing, so it's not going to happen. I said, okay, fine. And 2 weeks after that, he calls me up and says, I really do want you to talk to all of my people. And it turns out that there are 2 regional conferences, which between them cover the entire country. And these have already been pre-funded, so it's going to happen. Would you be good enough to speak to both of them? So instead of having one speaking engagement at a high fee, and I've had 2 speaking engagements at a high fee. Good thing, bad thing, who knows? If you sincerely practice that, you will find that no matter what happens, you will deal with it. You will not be emotionally overthrown.
Very, very good. Whenever you can, make lemonade out of lemons for sure.
In fact, even go further. Don't even say, I got a lemon, I'm making lemonade. Just say, I got an opportunity to make a lemonade, and I'm going to build a chain of lemonade stands and franchise it throughout the world, and I'll become the McDonald's of lemonade stands.
Yep, exactly. Okay, the last polling question. Here's some great books. A, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. B, Are You Ready to Succeed by Sri Kumar Rao. C, Happiness at Work by Sri Kumar Rao. D, his most recent, Modern Wisdom, Ancient Roots. And then the answer is D, all of the above, which should be E, but if any answer you give is a good answer because it's a positive universe. All right, so Sri Kumar, we have 7 minutes left.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about the positive universe? I think you do a beautiful job with that, and might be a good way to do this.
So here's a question that most people never think about, but I'm now asking them to think about it. The question actually comes from one of the greatest scientists who ever lived, Albert Einstein. And he said, the most important question you will ever ask yourself is the universe friendly? Now, we think about Einstein as a great scientist, and he was, but he was also a philosopher who had a very deep understanding of the way the universe worked. And he said the most important question you will ever ask yourself is the universe friendly? The vast majority of us think the universe is neither friendly nor unfriendly, it's indifferent. It doesn't know I exist and couldn't care less. So here I am going around doing my thing, and here's the universe going around doing its thing. Sometimes it seems to be helping me, sometimes it seems to be thwarting me, but essentially it's a random process. What if that was not true? What if the universe was aware you existed, and what if it was a friendly universe? Now, friends don't shaft friends, do they? Of course not. So if it was a friendly universe, why does it give me stuff I don't want? I want to travel on vacation, and the universe gives me pandemics and lockdowns. Why does the universe give me stuff I don't want? Well, what if the universe gave you stuff that you might not want, but it was exactly what you needed for your learning and growth? Like you're a small child and you want a cup of ice cream, and the universe, through your parents, gives you fruits and vegetables, and you don't want fruits and vegetables. You want a tub of ice cream, but your parents give you fruits and vegetables. And it isn't until you have a much higher level of wisdom and maturity that you can say, thank God I got fruits and vegetables rather than a tub of ice cream. What if the universe was like that? It gives you exactly what you need, which may not be what you want. In fact, frequently it is what you don't want, but it's exactly what you need for your learning and growth. Regardless of whether or not the universe was friendly, Alan, if you believed the universe was friendly, your experience of life would improve dramatically, because you would no longer rail at the stuff that happened to you, but simply say, it's a friendly universe. What's the lesson it's teaching me? Let me learn it fast so I can move on. And if the universe actually was friendly, your life becomes magical. Now, just because you recognize that a friendly universe is a better model doesn't mean you can adopt it. You have to work to live in a friendly universe. So how do you decide the universe is friendly? It's very simple. Start looking for signs that the universe is friendly. And when you're actively looking for signs that the universe is friendly, there are so many of those that pop up all over the time. Like, we haven't been in touch for a while, and I forget what happened. You invited me to one of your events, and we did, and you introduced me to someone whom I really like, and things may or may not happen with that person, but it's a good feeling. And then you said, by the way, I'm having a webinar. Would you be part of that? And I said, fine. And in that webinar, you did make them aware of my book, and I hope some of them will go out and get it. Will all of that happen? Maybe, maybe not, but it doesn't matter. There's a possibility. It's a friendly universe that decided you and I have to get together again at that time. It's a friendly universe that told me right after this webinar is over, my wife is dragging me out to Manhattan so we can have dinner with my son. So it's been a long time since we did, and it's time for me as a father to have a deep conversation with my son. Will it happen? I don't know. I'll give it a shot. And if it does, fine. If not, we'll have a good dinner anyway. If you decide it's a friendly universe, it completely changes your perspective on the stuff that happens to you. And it's much better being in a friendly universe than an indifferent or a hostile universe. And the transition always happens between your ears.
That is a great way to summarize a lot of what you've written about and what you've lectured about, Sri Kumar. I would just say your books are just fascinating. We could go on for a day and a half here, if not 3.5 days.
So you know what? Another 3 months, I'll come back for another webinar.
Exactly. Well, Sri Kumar, I think we've answered all the questions that people have had, and the audience has been very happy because they've stayed with us. If anyone has any questions for Professor Rao, you could just send me an email or send him an email. You've got our email addresses down there at the bottom. srikumarrao@gmail.com and agassman@gmail.com. What's that?
Sri Kumar S. Rao, my middle initial at
Oh,
Gmail.
that's right. Yep. And that's on the screen. Okay, everybody, thank you very much for being with us. Sri Kumar, thanks again, and may the rest of everyone's.
And you have a terrific rest of your life.
Thank you very much. The same to you as we take it together.